This is the 40 Thrive Podcast, episode 19.
You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. Get exclusive access to expert advice, support, and strategies that will inspire, motivate, and give you the tools to not just survive, but thrive. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to the 40 Thrive Podcast. Today's episode is a good one. I'm talking with the brilliant Amy Porterfield. If you're looking for business tips and online marketing strategies, this episode is not that. But before I tell you more, I want to give a listener shout out. I am so grateful to those of you who take a minute out of your day to rate and review the podcast. This one comes from Mrs. Mullery, who shared her review on Apple Podcasts. Being over 40 finally feels good when you get to hear Jackie and friends tell it like it is. Why, thank you, Mrs. Mullery. I totally appreciate that. If you leave a review on your favorite podcast app, I just may feature you on an upcoming episode. All right, back to the show. Millions of people have built and grown their businesses with the help of Amy Porterfield's courses and podcast, Online Marketing Made Easy. I'm one of them. But being a student of human behavior, really, which just means someone who's fascinated by how people show up in the world and the choices they make, I couldn't help but notice a change in Amy over the past 12 months or so. Her podcast felt different, and even her videos felt like something had shifted. I just felt like she was really trying to cut through whatever it was she was going through and really working to show up as herself. I was feeling it, and I assumed that other listeners and viewers were also feeling it. I wondered, was it because she's now over 40 and she, as we like to say, gives fewer Fs? Or she was just getting more comfortable with herself? Did she have a coach or maybe a confidant pushing her in this new direction? I just had to find out. So like any reasonable podcaster would, I reached out on Instagram and asked her to be on the show. Here's a little side note for anyone who's listening. That's one of my biggest lessons to both my students and my kids, my own kids at home. If you don't ask, the answer is no. So I asked her to join me on the 40 Thrive Podcast. Now, I really enjoyed talking with Amy. Not only does she agree with the idea that she's shifted in this way, but she shares the thing that made her realize that it was time to change things up. Oh, and she also talks about the friends who called her out for being one Amy privately and another Amy when she was showing up in her business. I think you'll like this conversation as much as I did. But before we get to Amy, I invite you to head on over to 40thrive.com. I've created 10 tips to start thriving today. It's totally free, chock full of some simple strategies to thrive in all areas of your life. 40thrive.com. Get your 10 tips to start thriving today. Okay, without further ado, the reason you're here, my conversation with Amy Porterfield. Amy, welcome to the 40 Thrive Podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm excited because I listen to Online Marketing Made Easy all the time, every week when it drops on Thursday. And one of the things you talk about that I respect is saying no to things that don't necessarily work with where you're going. And so the fact that you said yes to the 40 Thrive Podcast, I'm honored.
Yes, for sure. Definitely. I feel like this is a good fit. I'm excited to talk to your community.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm sure many of them already know exactly who you are. I'm not the only one who's a fan of your podcast and of your courses. I often use you as a case study for my own podcast launch students.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Even just little things. And like the fact that you used to have a voiceover and music at the top, and now you just say, hey, welcome back. And I feel like people make life so much more complicated than it has to be.
Yes.
And so I use you as an example of like, hey, she's got tens of thousands of followers or more, every episode. And this is how she opens it. Like, you don't have to make life so darn complicated.
I'm so glad you teach that because a lot of my students feel the same way. They make it feel complicated or they compare themselves to somebody else who's doing something really bigger than them, like way more advanced than them. And I say, you can't compare yourself to them. They're way ahead of you anyway. But just regardless, we have to stop the comparison game. It just is a soul sucker.
Oh, seriously. I just put that on Instagram the other day where I was like, you're not failing. You're just at the beginning.
Yes, exactly. There's a very big difference.
Absolutely. So, for anyone who's followed you for more than 5 minutes, they know you are all about value and actionable strategies. You're not one of those podcasts that, you come in and you have to hear what you had for breakfast for 5 minutes before you get started. And I appreciate that. And I think women over 40 who are trying to learn don't necessarily respond to that. So I really appreciate how you stay in that place of action.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying so. It's important to me because I listen to a podcast and sometimes I'm like, get on with it. Let's get to this. So and maybe it's a little bit of my impatience, but I like just getting down to business. And of course I share stuff and I take people behind the scenes in my personal life, but I typically make sure that everything I do is full of value and truly is about helping my students in my community get action. I just don't like the fluff.
Yeah. And I love that about you. So this is why I reached out to you on Instagram. So over the past year or so, I've noticed a shift kind of in the way you show up in your business. And you're a lot more vulnerable and you're a lot, I don't want to say more authentic. You never came across as inauthentic to me, but you give more of Amy to what you do. And I'm like, yes, I love this. And I could tell, I mean, you're very honest about how scary it is to get into that shift. And I want to talk about that. But before we do, I want to go back. So if we were to drop in at 10-year-old Amy's house and you're sitting around the table and you're doing your thing, like, what were you like as a kid?
What was I like? I was pretty outgoing, definitely an outgoing kid. I came from a blue collar home. So my dad was a firefighter. My mom was a hairstylist and very, very busy. And they worked a lot. And so at 10 years old, I remember my mom had taken a job. So she was not home when I got home from school. So I'd come home and be alone. And I think that's probably where I fell in love with this idea of being alone. I enjoy being alone. I get my energy from being by myself, and my energy is depleted by being around a lot of people. And I think it started from those days of kind of being just doing my own thing. My sister was older. She had her own life, but I also didn't have tons and tons of friends, to be quite honest. I had a few select friends and cherish those friendships. But that is exactly how my life is now. So it's funny how not much has changed when you look at yourself as a child. That I was involved in a lot of stuff. And throughout high school, I was a cheerleader and all of that. And I would have said I was an extrovert when I was a child and growing up through high school. Now, I don't know what shifted, but I am definitely an introvert. So that was the only thing that from childhood to now kind of changed.
Interesting. So do you ever feel like you like being out there and at parties and things like that? Or you just would always choose Real Housewives and your dog over a party?
So here's the thing. If I got the choice, do you want to stay home, watch a movie with your husband and your dog, and or do you want to go out and there's a really fun party with great people there? My gut reaction would always be, I want to stay home. However, I do push myself to get out there because when I am out there, I really enjoy myself. It's something in my mind that says, I don't want to do that. I don't want to I don't like small chat and small talk and all of that. So I don't love that. But then when I get out there, I have a really good time. So I don't let myself be a hermit, but I could naturally be one.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm the 11th of 13 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I sort of have a big personality and I love to be around people. But I notice I take the energy of other people around me. And so if I'm out and about, it's exhausting.
Yes.
And so as, I just turned 48 and I feel like I totally appreciate just being home with my husband, my kids, and just not having to be on, I guess. Because especially as an entrepreneur and with your success, I'm sure you have to be on whenever you're out there in the world.
It's so funny you bring this up. I have a life coach that I talk to every single week, and she's actually my weight loss coach that is a life coach. So we talk about everything. And I was telling her that this is such a weird tangent, but there's a point here, that I tend to overeat after I am around a lot of people for a work function, a live event. So I just recently went to a live event where I spoke on stage. I was on a panel. I did tons of meet and greets, and it's wonderful. And I'm so lucky that I have this huge audience, and it's so depleting to me energetically. And so when I get home, I'm exhausted. And that's when I tend to choose very poorly in terms of where's the pizza, let's sit on the couch and have snacks kind of thing. And so she said, why do you think you do that? And I said, I just feel like everyone, when I'm in those situations, they want something from me. I've got to be on the whole time. There's no relaxing. Like I've got to smile and be on and put myself out there and serve everybody. And she picked up on what I said. She said, what do you mean they want something from you? I'm like, ooh, I don't even know where that came from. And she said, we need to really shift how you look at that, because you get to do that. You are so fortunate that you get to do that. And you've chosen this career. You've chosen to do all that. The second you feel like something's being done to you is when you go down a dark road kind of thing. And so I really have to manage my mindset, because yes, I always thought that meant I had to be on. I had to be something I wasn't. And now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, I never want to feel that way. So it was a huge eye opener. Like, I need to shift how I'm looking at that. Because yes, I was looking at it like, I have to be on, I have to serve, I have to be there for them. And instead of like, wait a second, this is a huge opportunity for me. Lucky me.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing mind shift. But on the flip side, I have to say that I completely relate to what you're saying, because if you're going to have a more public persona, you do feel like, I shouldn't speak for you. Like, do you feel like you owe it to people who maybe have spent money with you or came out because you would be there, like that you have to make sure that they get the very best Amy?
Yes, I do. I do. I feel there. I hate to admit it, but I do feel that way. And so luckily, here's the great thing. Luckily, I love what I do, so it doesn't turn into something negative, but I do feel like I need to show up for them. So if we're being really honest, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it's my background is in television, and I've worked with lots of high profile people, and I've noticed sometimes when a celebrity has boundaries, they're not necessarily going to have their energy sucked out by every person who wants to be around them. You'll see something written up like, oh, what a bitch,
Right.
And it's
right.
like we as women, especially women over 40, need to be comfortable in our boundaries. And so I can understand if you're going to something and people paid and you're on stage or you have to take pictures. Like I was at your event last summer. Girl, I have no idea how you do it. But you were just like from beginning to end smiling and I could feel the gratitude. But at the same
I did
time,
have a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm just like, how is she doing that? To the point where sometimes I feel responsible for other people that I'm like, I'm not going to go over and say hi to her because I don't want to be another person who suck the life out of her.
We have a similarity there. Like, I feel like I need to take care of everyone around me. So I wouldn't have said hi too. It's so funny, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't like I didn't want to. It's funny because I actually went out to dinner and had drinks. And then I came back and like the event had been over and you were still upstairs taking pictures. And then I was like, screw it. It's 7:30.
Good.
And so you were leaving and we're like, hey. And so I introduced myself. But for me, I was not going to be that person that added any more stress or any more to your, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I hear you.
When I hear you do your podcast and talk about your personal life, I relate to you so much in that way.
Oh, I love that.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Orange County.
Oh, okay. So you're always been a California girl.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
And so you're following the corporate world and even working for, I would say, the biggest personal development personality of our time, Tony Robbins.
Right.
Are you feeling successful? Are you feeling like you're moving in the right direction? Or had you always had that pull to do your own thing?
Oh, I have not always had that pull. When I was in corporate, so out of college, I was in book publishing and nonprofit and then found my way to Tony Robbins. And I excelled in corporate. I was a rule follower. I liked the structure. I wanted to move up the ladder. I found myself like, okay, what would a VP look like and all of that? But never did I ever think I'd run my own business, ever. I don't know why that never entered my mind, but it just didn't. And then after working for Tony Robbins for 6 years, all he teaches is like, do your own thing, follow your dreams. And he got a lot into this business mastery. And I started to listen to him and he talked to the entrepreneurs. And I thought, I want a piece of that. And then when I was at Tony at the last year, he started to sell his digital courses and he brought in some internet marketing guys, all men, internet marketers, to teach him how to sell courses online the way they were selling them. And I sat at a table. I was literally at a separate table taking notes. That's how humbling this is. And watched these guys talk about their businesses and what it looked like. And something stirred in me. And I thought, I got to know what they're doing. I got to do something like that. So I asked to move to the marketing department from the content department. They let me, and I got to be a part of those product launches. And I just got the bug and I thought, I got to figure this out. But it wasn't until my last year at Tony did I think I would ever do my own thing.
Wow. But, was there any conflict there? Because, I mean, you're a self-proclaimed yes girl who's eager to please, and yet you want to go and do your own thing. Like, was there a little bit of a personal conflict for you?
Definitely there was this thought of what would people think of me? What would Tony think of me? Or what would my colleagues think of me? Like, who's Amy to be going off and doing her own thing? I didn't even know if I had a skill set that would translate into being an entrepreneur. I think we all do, but at the time I didn't know that. And so I was worried what everybody else would think. And quite honestly, I had a great relationship with Tony, but it's not like we were best friends. And he probably didn't think anything of it. Like he just went on with his way. Everyone's living their own life. So we think they're thinking about us. They're not.
Right. What's that saying that like you'd be surprised at how little people are actually thinking of you at all?
Yes, exactly. Oh, if I just learned that earlier.
We need that life experience, So we just try to teach the young folk behind us.
Yes.
So you venture out and you start your own business and you get into social media.
Yes.
What did that look like?
So what it looked like was I thought I was going to go out and create a business where I created digital courses to teach people how to do marketing. However, I went out on my own and realized I don't even know how to create a digital course. I've seen it done, but I've never done it myself. And I need money. I didn't have a bunch of money saved to go out on my own. So I decided, because I did social media a little bit behind the scenes at Robbins, I decided I'll do that. And I took a lot of trainings. I got in there. I got part of a mastermind. I learned my stuff and I started to take clients. And what happened was this business idea I had in my head turned into something totally different. So instead of having one big boss, Tony Robbins, who I was looking forward to doing my own thing and being my own boss, I took all these clients and I had zero boundaries. I was a yes girl. So I said yes to everything. And all of a sudden I had 8 clients calling me at all hours of the day and night with these crazy expectations of running their social media. This was in the Wild West days of social media. So they were asking for things that were not going to happen. And I said yes to it all. And I was miserable 2 years into my first business on my own. And I didn't have a digital course and I hated everything I had created. I had created a business I had hated.
Oh, and so this is where a lot of people would just live in misery.
Yes.
And feel like I got what I asked for. Be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
What was it that gave you the courage to say, this isn't it, I'm trying something else?
So I think I was just miserable enough. Unfortunately, I had to get to a place that I thought, this is not what I thought being an entrepreneur would look like. And I do not like this. So there was that stirring in me again of I've got to make a change. But also I started to pay attention. I am definitely a constant learner. And I started to take courses about how to run an online business and what my options were in terms of a business model. I knew I wanted to create digital courses. So I finally got the courage just to do it. And I did it. I put together my first course. It was all about social media. I got it out into the world. And when all was said and done, after I launched it, I made a whopping $267. And there were many, many tears. The worst part about it is when I left Tony Robbins, I consulted for some really big internet marketers and they were making millions. So I just assumed I get a digital course together. I followed the same model they followed. I'd make millions. So when I didn't, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go back to my job. This is not going to work. Luckily, and this is what I tell all my students, you got to have a good support system, at least one person in your life that picks you up and says, you are never turning around, you're moving forward. And that was my husband. So I got very lucky. But he just kept saying, you're not going back to any kind of job. You're going to figure this out. And eventually I did. Eventually I launched another course. It was a success and I let go of all of my clients. So I ended up 0 clients, only digital courses. These days, 90 to 95% of my revenue comes from the sale of my own digital courses. If you told me that 10 years ago, I'd say you're crazy because this ain't working. Like nothing's working for me. So the first 2 years, very, very tough.
Yeah. So what do you think was the biggest difference between that $267 digital course and the next one?
So a few things. Great question. Number one, I think you got to just do it. I needed to figure out what it would feel like to launch a course and just kind of get those jitters out. So I had that behind me. It didn't work, but I knew the mechanics and what it would take to get it all together. Another thing is that I was starting to go to live events and conferences. And at the time, it's not even around anymore. There was this event called Blog World. And I went to Blog World and I had a client. This is before I successfully launched a course. I had a client who brought me there on his dime to wrangle other internet stars, wrangle them to do interviews with him. And his name was Mike Stelzner. And at the time he was creating Social Media Examiner, the website that we all know, right? But he didn't have Social Media Examiner at the time. And I met him because he had written a white paper for Tony. And I was the go-between Tony and Michael to write this white paper. So that's how I met Mike. And Mike said, I'm starting this website. If you're going to quit Tony Robbins, come on over. You can do a few hours with me a week. So he was one of my clients that I had. So anyway, long story short, he would take me to these live events and I would wrangle these people for interviews. And I started to meet people in real life. And I tell you that story because there is magic still in real life experiences and getting out from behind the computer. And so these relationships I met a guy that said, hey, I've got an audience. You've got all this knowledge. Why don't you create the course and we'll put it out there together? So we did a little joint thing for one of my very first $97 successful programs. And that helped immensely. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't put myself out there. So it's important to do that.
The people that you're putting yourself out there, are growing just as rapidly as you. I mean, Michael runs Social Media Marketing World every year too, which is enormous.
Yes, exactly. It's a huge, yes.
So it's funny because you tell the story about when you met Marie Forleo, and it's like, I see that with people in TV who are, executive producers and running networks, and people are like, how do you know that person? I'm like, oh, we were production assistants together, that you have no idea the people that you're making connections with, how they're going to grow and how you can continue to collaborate as you both do.
Yes, it's so true.
So you are, running these successful courses, you're married, you have a stepson, but you're not necessarily sharing a lot of you as a person. Would you say that was true?
Yes.
And so what was the catalyst? Was there a person, like somebody on your shoulder, like someone who said you should share more of yourself, or was it research?
It was definitely some good girlfriends in the industry. And I've actually never talked about this, and it just was a light bulb moment when you said that. I had a few friends that kind of under their breath would say stuff like, gosh, I wish this side of you would come out in social media, like when we'd be having drinks together. Or I remember I was in a mastermind many, many years ago, and one of the guys in the mastermind said, it's like there's an Amy Porterfield behind the scenes and an Amy Porterfield online, like two totally different people. And I hated hearing that because I never ever felt fake or inauthentic, but I just kind of listened, and I listened to people I trusted, and I heard it enough that I thought, I'm just not truly being myself online. And then I took a really good look in the mirror, and I was about 100 pounds overweight, and I was miserable, and I've always struggled with my weight since I was a little girl. And I just thought, I know part of the reason I'm not fully sharing myself online is because of my weight. I don't like how I look and how I feel. And yes, I could have just in that moment worked on just loving myself and not losing a pound, but I also was feeling bad. I didn't have energy. I was always kind of a little bit moody and sluggish and all of that. So I thought, I need to do something here. So I hired a weight loss coach, and my weight loss coach did not work on the food with me. She worked on my emotions and feelings and why I overate, which was life-changingly different than anything else I've ever tried. So it's been a year now since I decided if I want to put myself out there, because you said over the last year you've seen a change in me, and it has been. It's been a full year. And I wanted to put myself out there. So I shared my weight loss journey a little bit, and that felt scary, but good. The response was amazing. This was before I had lost a pound. I just admitted that I hated doing video because of my weight. And then I hired this weight loss coach, and then we got into all the deep stuff that was holding me back and making me want to overeat. And I've worked on that for a good solid year now. I'll always have to work on it, but it feels good. 65 pounds later,
Nice.
I feel like a totally different person. And I know I didn't need to lose the weight in order to share myself online. And I want to make that known to anybody that's listening. But this was my journey. And I just decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to start sharing more. And it feels really good. Sometimes it feels awkward, but at the end of the day, it feels really good.
Yeah. And I have to give you major props because that episode where you talked about how you felt on video, I relate to the whole weight thing. And I look at past pictures of me. I'm like, why didn't you appreciate your body then?
Right.
But I was at a challenge at the gym and they said, okay, well, you get extra points because you could win money at the end of it. You get extra points if you post your before pictures. And I said, I'll post my before pictures with my after picture.
You're right.
I'm not posting it by itself in the beginning.
No way.
Exactly. I'm like, that's ridiculous. And it was $2,000 we're talking about. So like, you would think I'd say, oh, sure, I'll just post it. But there was no way I was going to post that. Now that I look at the before and after, I'm like, oh, I would totally post it. But you didn't necessarily wait until you dropped a pound. You came out and just put it out there of how you felt. And I think you really gave a lot of women permission to go, oh my gosh, I've been hiding, even if it's from video or from life, because I don't feel worthy. And so I think as a public person that you do give people permission when you are able to put yourself out there.
So true. I mean, when I realized, wait a second, this isn't all about me. I know that if I do this, there's people watching that will feel, wait, if Amy can do this, I can do this too. And that's precisely what's happened. It's so crazy. When I go to a live event and I speak on stage, afterwards, I'll take pictures with people. And what I'm so proud of the content I create, like I'm business minded through and through. So I think when people come up to me, they'll say, oh my gosh, Amy, I love your podcast. My favorite episode is, and I'll think, oh, was it the list building one? Or maybe the webinar one? How about the courses one? And it's almost always the one you did about your weight. And I thought, Amy, listen up. If that's what's resonating with people, then keep doing this, keep sharing, because we're all human. And at the end of the day, business is important, but the other stuff is more important. And that's what I think I finally realized.
Yeah. I don't believe anyone can really lose weight in the long run when they beat themselves up and feel bad about themselves.
Agree.
It's when you start to unpack some of those feelings that maybe you didn't even know you had and start to lighten up emotionally, then the weight comes off along with that.
Exactly.
But did you feel you couldn't necessarily continue talking about the weight loss journey until you hit a certain marker? Or were you comfortable just talking about it the whole time?
I did talk about it a little bit the whole time, and I still would love to lose more because I like I said, I feel like I have 100 pounds to lose, and I'm only 65 pounds there. Everyone has an opinion about that when I say it, but it is my own thing. And so I talked about it through and through. I probably didn't get comfortable talking about it till maybe I hit like the 50-pound mark. Mm-hmm. Like when I saw significance, then I felt more like, for me to say, I was talking to my weight loss coach a year ago. If you told me I was going to say that on a podcast, I'd say you have lost your mind because that is too vulnerable. That would be too embarrassing to say I have a weight loss coach. Now I could care less. But before I had kind of proof that it was working, I probably didn't share it so freely.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it's like if you're planning to run a marathon and you're like, I ran a mile.
Exactly. So I needed to get some success under my belt for it to feel more comfortable. But yeah, I did continue to share after that episode. I just thought I've put it out there, so I better keep sharing.
Right. So how does that feel when that's the thing that people really respond to, when you have worked so hard to build this empire, really?
Yes. It's weird. Yeah, it's a mindset shift for me as an entrepreneur. I think it's the world we live in now and what online has moved into with social and video and all these different ways to connect with people, they want to know behind the scenes almost more than they care about the business stuff sometimes. But I know, and this is something I've learned along the way, if somebody in my audience feels very connected to me because of my weight loss story, she's likely to trust me even more so when I tell her my business story. And so because I'm so business minded, I realize that one can't kind of live without the other. And so if you want to come into my world and meet my husband, Hobie, and my son, Kate, and my dog, Scout, and you want to know what it looks like in my office, and you want to know what skincare I use, and you're curious about my list building course, well, then I'm here for all of it. And I couldn't say that a couple years ago.
Yeah. Just hearing you talk about it, you're like so much more free flow.
Right.
And listen, I am team Amy, like all the way. So please take this how I mean it. But it felt like really uncomfortable. And you would admit it.
Yes.
Like, I'm saying these things and I feel like I better write them down so I can read them and not feel them.
It's totally true. I'm so glad you brought that up. When I did that episode about my weight, it was 9 minutes and it was a script. Like I couldn't even say it without reading it. I meant every word, but I had to write it down first. And so, yeah, you're totally true. And here's one thing that I stopped doing, at least I've tried to stop doing. Now, when I share stuff, I try not to go on and on and on about how vulnerable I feel and how scary it is and how embarrassed I am. I'm just trying to say it. I'm not perfect at that. Sometimes I still have to say like, this feels awkward, but here I go. But I don't go down. Keep going on and on and on about it. I just say it. And I think there's a shift there as well.
Absolutely. And it's such a great point because I see some people doing, women especially, doing Facebook Live or some sort of public video. And the first thing like, oh, I look terrible today.
Right.
Or they're playing with their hair and it's like, oh my gosh, you are a brilliant expert in your field. How are you placing your value in what your appearance may or may not be that day?
I know. It's really unfortunate. And I've so done it. So I can totally relate. That's one thing as I get older. So I'm 43 and I notice the wrinkles a whole lot more now. And I'm doing video almost every day. And that's tough. I will be very open about that's tough. Seeing myself age on camera is not my most favorite thing. And I've been around 10 years doing camera. So I see the shift, but I really like just yesterday, I said to myself, Amy, your looks that is not what this is about. Like I was thinking about Botox or something and I was thinking, that is not what this is about. Get in your office and write the content, get it done. Cause that at the end of the day is what it's about, like what you're teaching. So I have to totally talk to myself about that stuff.
Well, and you're lucky that you surround yourself with people who do their job well, like great lighting and
yes, yes.
Because you look great. And, I heard something back when I was probably 35, so I didn't necessarily buy into it, but somebody said something like, you have to make a choice over 40, like your ass or your face.
Oh, God.
If you're thinner, then you're going to have more wrinkles.
That's probably why it's become a big thing. As the weight's coming off, I'm like, this is not fair. I'm seeing more wrinkles as the weight comes off. So you're right. Like, what am I going to choose? It kind of sucks, but it is what it is.
But you'll get used to it. I know you surround yourself with great photographers and videographers and all that, but like there's a light in you that I have seen really sparked.
I appreciate it. I feel it. I do.
Yeah. It can only help your business because people may come and look at your product because it's something that they're interested in, but that's not why they hire you. That's not why they slap down the credit card. It's because of that whole know, like, and trust factor.
Right.
And the fact that you are willing to show up even when it's uncomfortable gives them permission to show up even when it's uncomfortable.
I agree. Amen to that.
Yeah. So what's next? So I know you're doing this and you just launched Digital Course Academy in January. And God, I sound like a stalker, girl.
I love you for it. So thanks for knowing. Yeah. So that was a big initiative for this year to get that brand new course out. We're launching it again in September. And then from there, I am very interested in creating some kind of group coaching aspect, like a membership site group coaching kind of thing. So we're working on that. And we're working on my first mastermind that we would like to launch at the end of this year into the new year. So nothing is set in stone. I have to be careful of that because I put things out there and then I change my mind, which is fine. I don't change my mind when it's on the calendar, but while I'm working on it, you want to talk about it, but you're like, this might change a little. But those are two things that I'm very excited about. So thanks for asking.
Sure. And what do you think personally? You're now, how old's your stepson now?
He is 16, almost 17. I feel like he's a man now. He came into my life when he was 4, so he's been around forever. And we are talking colleges now, so that's a big deal. One more year of high school, and he's gone, which just kills me. So,
oh my gosh, it sounds like business and family is all consuming, of course. But as he moves into college and your business, a lot of it's automated. You should have a little bit more freedom, I would think.
I think we do. Yeah. And what we're doing live launches as well as evergreen. So we've got automated as well as the live stuff, which is more manual. But what we're doing is we are staffing up. So right now we're doing a big hiring, and we're doing it in 2 phases. So we've got about 4 positions we're hiring for now, and then we're going to do a few more after those get trained. And the reason for that is, one, I've got these bigger initiatives and I don't have a big enough team to handle all of it and without burning them out completely. And I don't want to do that. And number 2, I would like to step back a little bit and just be the visionary and start thinking bigger and bigger strategies. I'm still very much in it. And so that's why the new hiring. So we are kind of looking at what next year would look like. So I'm excited.
That's great. Because I was wondering, how long can that last where you're just like killing it every single day? And, there have to be some personal goals for Amy Porterfield as well.
For sure. And this is the year I would like to hit my goal weight. So I'd like to be done with the weight loss and just focus on the maintenance. That's a very big personal goal for me. And at the same time, Hobie and I, my husband, are thinking about buying a vacation home and saving money for that. And where do we want to live? And what would that look like now that our boy's going to be graduating soon? And so we've got some personal goals on the horizon that I'm most excited about. So life is good. I have to say, I actually made some big shifts this year in order to have a different kind of year, and it feels different. So hearing from you saying, I see a shift in you, I see a light, I appreciate it because I feel it. So thanks for that validation.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see what you do next, because in the 40 Thrive community, I think you're probably hitting it a little younger than many, but many of them are watching the kids leave the house. My kids are still 12, 13, and 14. So I've got some time.
Right. Being a stepmom is why he's that way. But you're right. Most are not as old as Cade yet. So
right. But you can start really kind of thinking about you and your husband and the things that you want to do with your life outside of just parenting.
It's exciting. Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things I ask all my guests before I let you go is, what does it mean to 40 Thrive for you?
It means to not care what everyone else thinks and to really get clear on what you want, what lights you up, and go for it, no matter what anybody else thinks. And it means that you're not just courageous, but you're confident. You've got a track record. You know what you're capable of. Now let's take it up a notch.
I love that. Amy Porterfield, I am so grateful that you said yes.
Oh, I'm so glad I did too. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was awesome.
Good stuff. That was a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for listening to the 40 Thrive podcast. Don't forget to share this with a friend over 40 who you think could benefit from this conversation. You know the one. She really needs to hear this right now. I also invite you to join us in our private 40 Thrive Facebook group to connect with other women who share that same passion for thriving over 40. And tune in next week. I talk with Moana Dixon. She's the founder of Hunted Fox, but you may know her as a runner-up on The Bachelor way back in 2006 with Dr. Travis Stork. We talk about business and life over 40, but she's also sharing things she's never revealed publicly before about her experience on The Bachelor. So if you're into The Bachelor, you are definitely going to want to tune into this one. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.